welcome to the Adoption Lounge. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Katie. Thank you so much for joining us. So, I guess last time we talked about how we were going to Utah, and we did. We went.
We came, we conquered.
We got to be pit girlies to see Kelsey Ballerini, which was amazing.
For the second time.
Yes. Well, I mean, it was our first time in the pit, but it was our second time seeing Kelsey Ballerini. So,
yes.
Great show, girl. Loved it.
We got matching best friend tattoos. Little bows.
Little bows, our invisible string tattoos with our bestie Sarah. So shout out to Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
True friendship. I think she actually listens to our podcast.
She does. She's our one and only viewer.
Yeah, but I mean, I know that you're busy with the kids and sports and, you know, with the end of school and everything. We haven't gotten to do too many fun things since then, but.
Oh, well, Katie has because she went on a Disney cruise.
That's right. We did go on a Disney. We took Reese on a Disney cruise. It was really fun. It was our very first cruise. We were first timers. One of our former adoptive families is now my travel agent. Tell families when I meet with them, I have very few boundaries with my family.
I also use her too.
Yeah, I mean, she's great.
Yeah.
So today we're going to actually go over some questions that came up. We did a webinar recently. Liz, our director of education, is doing an amazing job putting together these webinars. And so we did one where one of our owners, Carolyn, made a special appearance. And we just kind of introduced some things about joining the program. And one of the really big topics that I feel like kept coming up was about basically relationships moving forward with birth parents, navigating that, fears surrounding that.
Yeah, a lot of the questions were definitely fear-based.
Yeah.
It's scary.
So we're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it. How to navigate it, how to overcome it.
Yeah.
Some strategies to communicate effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start off with like probably the most common fears that we hear from adoptive parents.
Yes. I think one is changing their mind. They don't want expectant moms to change their mind, and they want to do everything that they can to make sure that she's comfortable and doesn't change her mind based on communication, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the number one fears that I hear from families who are thinking about starting this process. I think it's possible it even prevents families from starting this process because the idea of having a relationship with her, having that hope, and then having that taken away is just a little bit too terrifying, especially if they've already experienced loss and disappointment.
Things not working out. They don't want to start another path that may not be successful. And I think also when they're in the process, knowing that they can talk with other families, I think there's some nerves there because you don't want to say something wrong or do something that may cause them to want to choose the other family or bond better with the other family. So I think that there's some fear-based there.
And, you know, I've even had people ask me questions before, like, how does your company ensure that we're supporting it? I feel like sometimes the real question is, like, how are we ensuring they don't change their mind? And at the end of the day, you know, that's just not something that we can do. And I think our families would also agree with this. It's just hard going into it. That, you know, we want her to make the decision that's best for her, which in turn will be best for that child. And unfortunately, you know, it's just one of those situations where you have to take a little bit of a leap of faith. I think it will work. So I always like to say you're not starting over. If she decides to parent, it's just a detour. We have to get back on the main road, but we're not starting back at the very beginning. We just took a wrong turn, which I do professionally. Like, I constantly go the wrong way. So I feel like that just happens sometimes. And then if you can find a way to kind of get your head back in the game, and I know we've had past guests on here that have kind of talked about how they, like, I know Kelly, I think, really leaned into how she got back in the game with her husband after they had an expectant mom that changed her mind. You know, that your baby's still out there and that you'll feel that way after you connect. But I definitely think it's one of those things that you have to embrace about this process because it's something absolutely no one, no matter what they tell you, no one can protect you from ethically, because at the end of the day, it's truly and should be 100% her decision. And we just don't.
There's no way to guarantee
control.
that she won't change her mind. And there's really not one thing that's going to make her change her mind. It's
totally
like if she was going to change her mind, she's going to do that really.
And if it seems,
communication.
Yeah. I think if it seems like she does it kind of on a whim or like on something like, oh, maybe I said the wrong thing. At the end of the day, she was probably looking for an excuse.
Absolutely.
It wasn't the choice she wanted to make, and that's okay. So you got to move on. You got to move forward. Self-blame, I think there's no point in that. We can always learn and handle things differently in the future. And of course, if we have feedback, we'll share it. But most of the time, it's just not the right fit. So I feel like that's only moderately helpful because it's still going to be a fear that we can't do anything about it.
Hopefully it eases that fear. I mean, I think with any relationship, getting to know someone, there's fear in there, but that's kind of what makes it fun and interesting. And it shouldn't be enough to change who you are. Just be yourself.
Absolutely. And it always makes me think of that story. And I think I've told that story here before, but the story about the expectant mom or the birth mom that reached out to me a couple of years ago and was like, hey, thank you so much. We had a great family. I ended up deciding to parent. My son and I are doing great, but I would love to get in touch with them. And
oh, you did tell that story.
And like let them know how great we're doing and how much their support meant to me. And when I pulled the file to see when that family adopted, they adopted like a month later. And so I'm sure it was completely devastating when she made that choice, but you just don't know ever what's around the corner. So you just have to believe in the finish line of adoption, I think, the whole time.
Yeah, I agree. Something else that came up was boundaries. So I think families want to know how to communicate because you are doing that on your own. Adoptive parents are reaching out to expectant moms on their own and kind of navigating through the communication. There's no third party.
Right. There's not like oversight.
Yes, which is great because everyone can be more calm and it can be more casual. But, I used to tell families when I was an adoptive parent coordinator to get that out in the open in the beginning. After you have that first conversation, ask her, hey, moving forward, we'd love to continue to talk to you. How do you want to communicate moving forward? Do you want us to continue to text you? Do you want us to call? Do you want us to do it every day? Do you only want to talk a certain amount? And she may not know the answer to that right away, but at least you can have some expectation there. And especially if there's other families involved, you never want to. I've had families that have not reached out because they don't want to overwhelm her because they know that she's talking with other families. But then that made the expectant mom feel like the other family was more interested because they were reaching out more. So boundaries are hard with anything. So just ask, just communicate.
Yeah. I think, non-committal responses, there's no perfect formula for this. I think that you have to see what she is like as a person and you're right, just ask. What are your expectations of me? How would you like to be supported? How can I best support you?
Because we don't want to overwhelm you and reach out too much, but we also don't want you to take us not reaching out as a form of us not being.
Well, and to your point, I remember, and that's happened more than once. We had a family where when we called to tell them that she had decided to work with the other family because they hadn't really heard from them. And we were like, what's going on? They were like, well, she told us that she was really busy. So we were trying not to overwhelm her. And I think the problem with that is she's sharing, but she's not necessarily trying to shadow communicate that she doesn't want, but at the same time, she might be too overwhelmed to respond. So I feel like that's where non-committal responses are a great choice, where you can be like, hey, I was just thinking about you. I hope you're having a great day. It doesn't require a response.
Yes, but it lets her know that you're thinking of her and that you're still open. And or when she brings that up, that's a great segue into asking about, hey, it's so awesome that you're busy. Would it be okay if we reached out, or would you rather us not? Like and she may not, she may not know the answer of what she wants, but at least you've talked about it.
And made her feel safe enough to communicate her true feelings about it. Now, if she's still really nervous, she'll have her own counselor in our birth mother services department. So it might be that she can open up to that person and then they can help convey to you what her expectations are, what her hopes are. So, we all work together as a team to help make this as successful as possible and just support her however she needs.
Yep. And if she opens up to her coordinator, then we'll share if there needs to be a change in communication. You're not reaching out enough or you're reaching out too much. We'll always communicate that to you so that you can take that information and be as successful as possible.
Absolutely. So how do you think that families can navigate boundaries moving forward after placement?
That's a great question.
Thanks, Amanda.
Well, post-placement, I think it's great because you'll have the attorney that will kind of segue that conversation and figure out, again, just knowing what expectations are. Like, even if you have a semi-open adoption or an open adoption, there's different people communicate differently. You have people that are communicating a lot still after placement, and then you have some that may only send a few updates every year or throughout the year. So I think just asking her what her expectations are, and if it needs to change, obviously 18 years is a long time, you can change it. But I think just going into it with some sort of expectation on what she's looking for And that just comes from communication, which the attorney service provider will help with.
Yeah. And, I think understanding her communication style might change and differ from while she was pregnant and communicating with you. I mean, you have no way how you're going to emotionally react or respond to really anything. Nobody does. And so you have to be sensitive to that, see if her expectations have changed. I think some of our families will use like the Peapod app or set up a separate Facebook page. I always like these options as well. You might want to even communicate this with her. You have to remember that when you are just texting someone, they have no control over that information popping up on their phone. So the nice thing about using an app like the Peapod app is it gives her control over when she sees that information, especially if she's feeling vulnerable.
She'll know it's there.
Exactly.
But she doesn't, it's not in her face until
like
she's
on a
ready.
random Monday. I mean, she might love to hear or know there's an update, but it's not just like hitting her in the face, like you said, immediately when she might not be ready for it. So I think that there's a lot of different options. Maybe talk to her about what works best for her, or give her some different options that work for you and let her choose and kind of see how that goes. But just be fluid, I think.
Well, I love that you brought up that it'll change to post-placement, because I know families always communicate, when it gets closer to a due date, they're like, we've been talking with her almost daily right now, but once the baby comes, there needs to be some adjustment period. There needs to be boundaries. It's going to look different. And sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it does, but they're fearful of kind of what that will look like. And emotions are so different after placement. So it's important to kind of, even though you may go into it with some understanding of how you may or may not reach out, just knowing that can change and being open to that, especially for the birth mom.
I feel like families sometimes, when I hear feedback, they'll feel like they just want to be regular parents, and they don't want to kind of feel like constrained by a plan. So maybe you're a more easygoing parent who sends updates occasionally. Just, talk to her about that, see if that works for her. But if you're more structured or type A and you want to be like, hey, what if I send you an update on the 15th of every month? Is that okay with you? And that works better for you. I think your personality matters too. Your ability to follow through on that matters too. And whatever makes you feel more controlled and comfortable in the situation. I mean, those are all options.
Well, these are typically two people that have never done this before. So you're trying to guess what you're going to want, and it's hard. And that's what I mean by it can change. Even if you have some agreement where maybe you're going to talk once a month, but maybe that's a little much for her afterwards and she wants to lessen that a little bit, not to take that to heart, or vice versa. Just everyone just needs to be respectful.
Yeah. I think it's a hard thing to talk about when we don't have all the characters involved too. When you're talking about this hypothetically, it's hard to know what to expect. So other than navigating boundaries, what about outside influences? This is something that I hear a lot. They're like, we're so excited to be parents. We don't want to feel like this is a co-parenting situation. We don't want her to feel like she is trying to parent our child, and I think these are all really valid things to talk about for sure.
Well, and I think too, when you start to tell people that you're adopting, you hear stories about maybe a post-placement agreement that didn't go well, or you've watched, like I had this one family that was like, I know this sounds silly. Before I even say it, I know it does, but I watch a lot of movies. So like, think you
should
have
put that in the contract. No more Lifetime.
No more Lifetime or Hallmark. I just think you can take everything with a grain of salt just because it's how it worked for somebody else who's gone through adoption. Like what you just said, you're not the same characters. There's not the same people involved. So the situation is going to be different. I mean, even communication between adoptive parents when they've adopted multiple times and they have birth moms, they have different relationships each time they've adopted because it's a different birth mom. So I think just take everything, take what you can and learn from it, but don't let that be a negative influence on and put that on a birth mom when it wasn't her situation.
Yeah, and it's generally not something that I think this is something that people fear, but oftentimes not because it's based on any real knowledge of this ever happening. I think that when you hear about stuff like that, usually it might be more of a localized or familial adoption where they feel like kind of in that child's life still. Whereas with a typical private adoption, she is making this voluntary choice. It's lovely to have communication moving forward, but we don't generally see, women kind of having a lot of opinions about how that child should be parented. I think
No.
that
But that is a common misconception. They
it
always
is. I
ask,
hear it a lot.
especially with us in the beginning before they've talked to a home study provider, before they've really dived in to get education about post-placement communication.
Mhm.
They will often be like, is open adoption like co-parenting? Can I
Yeah.
move? It's like you're not in a
Yes, I had someone just ask me that the other day. They're like, "Can I leave the country?" I'm like, "Absolutely." But I get it. It's not a stupid question. I just
No, it's not.
you're just not tied. I feel like with foster care, it's such a long time. You're in the courts usually a long time. And it's very, very structured. You have pop-up visits, you have mandatory visits. And this is just a very different system than foster care and foster to adopt. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I just think that they're not comparable.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about some healthy relationships. I know we've kind of given some examples of healthy adoptive parent
Yeah.
and birth mom. I always liked On Your Feet. I
knew you were gonna
know.
bring up Pauline and Mary Ellen.
Pauline, it's one of my favorites. I just love, but that's also, she adopted twice, and she does have a
Yes.
different relationship with the birth mom of her second
Yes.
adoption. So that kind of plays into this. It's
Yeah.
different, but she has great relationship.
Well, and my
with both.
sister and I, our birth moms are very different as well. My sister's birth mom didn't really continue to send updates, and mine did. It never, as far as I'm aware, bothered my sister. I mean, we didn't really think about it that much. But when my birth mom would send stuff, we'd put it on the fridge. We'd talk about it. It was
Aw.
fun. Like Laura was involved in that as well. But her birth mom is just different. But it didn't really seem like one of us had more than the other one, if that makes sense.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have an open adoption, but if we did, I can guarantee you that my birth mom would have fully embraced my sister as well. I just know her as a person.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So.
And that could be difficult, having
Mhm.
two kids in the same household with different.
Yeah, but it's
dynamics.
nice because we both were growing up with the same reality. So like we were both adopted. So like we always have that in common, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah.
Like it's nice to have that, I think.
But Pauline, her first adoption,
Yes.
with the birth mom, they have they're like best friends.
Yes, they are best friends.
They live close too, so they're able to get together. I think they visit more than just.
Yeah. And Pauline, she does, I believe, sits on the board of directors now with On Your Feet, which is that foundation that we've talked about before that provides free post-placement services to birth parents. We are huge fans, huge supporters. They do a wonderful job. Mary Ellen in the past has been a wonderful peer advocate for expectant moms looking for support. So I know neither one of them will mind me using their names, but I just think they're a great example of just like more people to love your kid. As opposed to like it being like a battle.
Perfect example of taking an open adoption, which is typically just one in-person visit, and kind of making it your own. And she did adopt a second time with us, and she was semi-open.
I honestly don't remember. I didn't know we were going to talk about her, so I didn't look it up.
I know it's not as open as the first one.
Yeah, I think it's a very different relationship. We should have her on and just make her tell us about it. But
she said she would come on.
Yeah, she said she'd come on. So we'll ask her about it. But I think, if you have, for example, because I think this is what I hear most often. So let's say we have a completely different situation where, we have a family that is fully aware that potentially the birth parent or birth parents are now using or in kind of an unsafe situation, and they're just not wanting to expose their child to that. I think that is completely understandable. We support you in that decision. I think that communication, again, is a really helpful tool. If it were me personally, I would probably just reach out and be like, hey, listen, I want all the good things for you. I'm here to support you. I just don't think it's a good time to visit right now. Just be honest. And if she gets upset or doesn't respond or it gets toxic, I mean, you can always stop responding or cut off communication and then try again later. It's unfortunate when that happens, but you have to protect your family and you do have all the rights to do that.
Yes, that's a good point.
And there are communication agreements that are put in place, which I think is also a very positive thing. Not all states are doing them, but there are some out there, but I think there are always exceptions and that would probably be one of them for sure.
Great points, Katie.
You're so pretty.
You're so pretty.
Get distracted.
So let's talk about some strategies to communicate that can be helpful to adoptive parents. So we've kind of already touched on it, but setting boundaries. What are some ways that you think that you would tell adoptive parents that would be helpful to set those boundaries?
Well, I think understanding the kind of frequency of communication that she wants, and she may or may not kind of give you any useful feedback on this. I just don't know. It depends on how she feels or how much she knows about herself. But if you're feeling unsure, I would kind of start off by being like, hey, I would love to get to know you. Are you okay with me texting you daily? Would you rather me check in every other day? Do you have a preference, or should we just see how it goes, play it by ear, just to find out if she has any expectations, and making it clear that you are more than happy to fulfill them.
And I think having a conversation too, if you're adopting with someone, having a conversation about what your expectations are. What are you comfortable with? What's your hard line? What's too much communication? And I think communicating that as well, having just an open conversation. Don't be afraid to be like, hey, this is what I was thinking, but also being open that there's somebody else involved and trying to find that compromise on what makes everybody happy and comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think finding out the preferred method. Families ask about visiting as well. Prior to delivery, there's really no rules. So, you can always put it out there, offer, see what her response is. If she expresses to us, she would love if a family was capable of coming to visit her prior to delivery. We will obviously pass that on and see so you can address it with her. But like I said, there's no rules. So I think that if you have that time and capability, that's a really cool thing to offer to do, and then just see if she's open to it.
Yeah, it's not required, but it is nice to get to meet the expectant mom, and for the expectant mom to get to meet you prior to being in the hospital when emotions are high. But also, a lot of times when adoptive parents do go visit expectant moms, if the family is close by, they get to meet grandparents and other siblings and other children if expectant mom has other children, which I think is really nice, because as much as you can share with your child about the people that also love them, and I think is really neat.
Yeah, so, the more information, the better.
If there's time. Sometimes there's not. We have expectant moms that reach out late in the game, so there may not be time to go out and visit, but
I don't mean to get off the rails a little, but like a fun little story, and I know you've heard me. I told you this story.
I've heard all the stories.
You know all my stories. But I found out when I met my birth mom that every time she would try to eat a grape popsicle when she was pregnant with me, that I would kick her until she finally had to put it down and stop eating.
That is such a key. Like, to know that you were who you are in the womb. So cool.
Like a nature versus nurture conversation. It's just as difficult then. Yeah, hate grape so much to this day.
Poor, birth mom just wanted a freaking grape popsicle when she's pregnant.
Pregnant teenager was like, I want a pot. And I was like, no. Pick a different flavor.
Again,
should have picked a different flavor.
Should have picked correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Try again.
Grape, wrong answer.
I might tolerate orange, but are we really out of red popsicles? Like, find one.
They are the superior one.
Yeah. Like, ugh. Anyway, but it was really cool when I met her to know that, because I hate grape to this day. And I just thought that was so funny. You getting to connect with this person while she is pregnant with who could potentially end up being your child. Like, those are fun stories that you can all share.
Well, especially if there isn't going to be a lot of communication after. Like, for instance, Laura's mom. It would be nice to get to hear those cute stories about in the beginning, even if there's not communication after.
Well, and it was, I think, Nicole's birth mom who wanted a closed adoption, right? And told her up front she wanted a closed adoption. But then they spent 3 months during the pregnancy talking daily. Like, so much so that Nicole was honestly like, I think we'll most likely stay in touch. And then after placement, she was like, okay, I told you I wanted closed. We're doing closed. And so, it's so nice, I'm sure, for Nicole to still have that information, like, to get to actually know this as a real, like, I knew the woman that gave birth to you,
Well, and how amazing to get to share kind of who she was.
Exactly.
But it also can change. Like, there's the one, I always think it's a cute story. They had a semi-open adoption. They communicated. But when the child turned 10, they surprised. She'd been asking to meet her birth mom.
That video.
They're not continuing to have an open adoption, as far as I know. But I think it's just really cool how she spoke that she wanted to meet. They ended up making it work.
Video chats. So it wasn't just like
a close.
crazy overwhelming.
No,
Like they had been
no.
doing video chats, and I think she was her 10th birthday, if I
That's
remember
probably
correctly.
why the child wanted to meet her, because she had
Exactly.
gotten.
And it was a surprise. And I think that's emotionally fine, like really cool, even because they had already been in touch. They'd already been doing video
Yeah.
chats. Like she knows who this person is. But to have them there in person was a surprise. And I thought that was just, it was the coolest. They sent us a copy of the video. It's so cool.
Oh my gosh. We should ask if we can share it. It's because it is a really
A
cute
couple years
video.
ago, I think.
Yeah.
God, time passes.
So we talked a little bit about this as well, but handling
Yeah.
the emotions, especially as they change, because obviously the emotions that you have while preparing for her to give birth and for the adoption to actually happen, and then there's different emotions.
Yeah. And I think it's also okay to be happy and excited. I think this is a positive part of this traumatic situation. You know, we've talked to our birth moms before, and you know, that's part of the part that was so cool, is that they got to make somebody else's dream come true. And so don't be afraid to include her in that happiness. Don't feel like you have to take on what you think her emotions are. Like that's not even fair to her.
Well, you don't know what she's feeling. I'm sure it's conflicted, but I remember doing a success story, and I thought it was really interesting that the family said that they felt so conflicted on how they should feel, because although you're in this moment where you're leaving the hospital, they were saying goodbye to the birth mom at that time, and they were like, this is the happiest part of our life, like moment in our life, but it's one of the hardest for her. But it doesn't mean that she's not happy with her choice, though. So like, it's okay for you to show happiness, and I think it's okay to also allow her to feel however she's feeling, you to feel however you feel. You don't have to shield.
Yeah, and I think it's her right to enjoy her pregnancy and delivery however she wants and needs to do it for herself. We have families get extremely nervous sometimes during their time with us because she might want to throw herself a baby shower, or someone in her life is. And we've had plenty of successful placements after that. At the end of the day, like I said, if she's going to change her mind, she's going to change her mind, and that's what was supposed to happen. But I will tell you right now, having a baby shower because that's how she wants to enjoy her own pregnancy is not usually related.
Well, I think it's the people in, that happened to one of my families, and they had asked me, we don't know how to feel about it. And I thought it was really interesting because they really came to me with no feeling. They were like, I don't know how I should feel.
Yeah, like, let's work it out.
Yeah. And I was like, the people in her life that love her are just celebrating her being pregnant, her creating a life. A baby shower isn't celebrating necessarily like you becoming a parent, which I think is what we have put in our minds. It can just be celebrating the child. Whether or not you're going to parent the child, you can still celebrate the fact that you've created this life. And I think that's really...
Absolutely.
And they were like, oh, yeah.
Well, it's nice that they have family that is supportive and excited for this whole situation, because typically when they're doing that, they're aware of the adoption plan in place. And then we've even had, and it's so sweet, the expectant moms will give all the gifts to the adopting family. It's just,
and they want to provide that. They want to, even though they're providing enough, they want to provide something. And I think that that's really sweet. It's
just so much love.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that she's going to parent.
Little human. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think it can be a really beautiful thing. I think you just have to go in ultimately with an open mind, be prepared to be fluid, do your best to be respectful and supportive, and then just ask for advice. That's what we're here for. Yeah,
and speaking about asking for advice, some resources, I think one of the biggest resources that us as a company we provide is our peer-based group. And this can be for birth moms that are, handling different emotions, whether it be pre or post adoption, and same thing for our adoptive parents. If you're ever going through something, we have a peer-based group there's people there in all stages too. Some people with 18-year-olds and some people that their adoption isn't even finalized yet and they're in there, right? So I think it's great to...
We've been around long enough now that some of the first adoptions that Carolyn and Sharon did, those kids can rent a car now.
Oh my gosh, we had one come in that was starting law school in Chicago, and to get to meet her was awesome.
Yeah, I was out of town. I was so sad. I missed out on that.
I did not.
But you got to go. I was jealous. But yeah, it's so wild. But it is really fun. And it's a very great safe space to ask questions and connect with other people that might be dealing. And we do the same thing. I'm actually even on a separate offshoot chat for our birth parents from our peer-based support group, which is open to all birth parents, not just birth parents that worked with one of our companies, which is really cool. And there's just so much love and support in there.
They communicate. I think I brought this up before, getting to see how they communicate with each other and support each other. I think it's huge. And it's, often people feel like they're on an island by themselves when they're going through this, because even though adoption is something that I feel like not everyone talks as freely about. So being a part of the support group is wonderful, because you have other people that have gone through exactly what you're going through, or are going through what you're going through. So you guys can support each other in that. Yeah. So much different support in different stages. I think that's a great resource.
And at the end of the day, you have to remember that you have all the parental rights and she has none of them. So perspective-wise, I feel like it's much more terrifying for her, because she's just hoping you follow through on what you have said you're going to follow through on, So going into it, like I said, with an open mind and just being fluid and respectful and loving, that's all anyone can ask. And then hopefully it becomes much less scary.
Yeah. I mean, then there's fear with parenting. The fear doesn't
You
stop.
have different things to be terrified about.
Yeah, like a teenager.
We have double digits. It's going to be 11 this year, Reese.
I can't. Just is crazy.
I know. He's been treating me like a insolent teenager for years now, though, so I'm very well trained.
My son is going into high school, so. By the way, off topic, he has a beach-themed party at the Quarry, which the Quarry is like a fun hangout place that's on like a lake in the area that we live. And I am going to buy him a Hawaiian shirt. I don't even know if that's cool for 13, 14-year-olds, but like he's showing up beach-themed.
It's a theme. We love a theme.
We love a theme. And honestly, Mason's so, like, if I buy it for him, he'll probably just be like, I'll be like, this is what you're wearing to the dance. And he'll be like, oh, heck yeah, man.
Yeah, Mason's a whole vibe.
He's going to have a beach vibe.
Yeah.
Come Friday. Totally off topic.
Yeah.
So, fun.
But, I think moving forward, anybody that has any, like, fears or questions, like, we'll just talk about it. I think everyone's fears are different. They're all perspective-based, and they're all valid, but we're happy to talk them all out anytime.
Yeah. The end. Thanks. If you've made it all the way through, thank you so much.
I feel like
for listening. Hopefully this was helpful. I think it was surprising to see. I think because I've been out of adoptive parent services for so long, I forget how fearful people can be of birth moms and talking to them. So it was cool to see all the questions and then now get to talk about it. And hopefully this helps people.
Yeah. And I think in the beginning, you're so focused. There's so much information to absorb that even if you ask these questions and we give you these answers, I mean, reiterating it and revisiting it needs to happen down the road anyway.
Yeah. Listening to us or asking questions and getting answers isn't going to erase the fear, but hopefully it just eases the fear so that it's not like debilitating throughout the process.
Yes. Like I don't want it to prevent you from feeling like adoption is right for you. Like we'll talk it out.
Yeah. Don't let that be something that holds you back.
Totally. So next time, we'll see you again.
And we'll bring something great to talk about.
Yeah. I don't know what it is yet, though, so no fun segue. But we'll be there, and we're fun, so.
That's right.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.